If I see a man pushing a stroller, I'm sorry, I do giggle a little bit because it doesn't look right. I'm sorry. I think that strollers are meant for women and men with the baby carriers and all of this. It doesn't look right.
Okay.
Welcome back, y'all, to Bianca Woke Up Late, and today we have another video about the Lapifa Let's Talk Network and Amira, the Golden Girl. So, a few weeks ago, I brought up a video about Amira and some of the topics that she says. And again, I still think that she's important on the show, and the reason being is that we have a first-hand look on what it looks like for a woman to be completely invested in patriarchal society and into a very narrow way of thinking about masculinity and femininity. And it's on full display here. I'm not here to say whether it's wrong or right. I am just here to give my opinion about the questions and the answers given on this show that is spread to the audience that is here. To be honest, I don't find a problem with traditional way of living. I don't find a problem with traditional ways of thinking of masculinity or femininity. If you want to subject yourself to that, go right ahead. But to try to indoctrinate people that are trying to liberate themselves from it, that's a whole other issue. Again, I don't think it's right or wrong, but this is my opinion on her answer to the question: is the modern man a masculine man in society? And here we go.
Is the modern man a masculine man in society? Is the modern man a masculine man in society? Start with you, Amir.
No. I would say no. The modern man has been changed into something else, hence the word modern, because traditional men, a man that's traditional today will be seen as a misogynist, as a person who hates women because they they are more, how can I say this? They're more willing to lead their families. They believe more in the gender roles. They just act differently. Modern men, what I've seen today is how they're trying to change men to be more feminine and more like women. They're trying to make the modern man today, especially like the modern husband. When you think about the modern husband, you think about a man who takes the baby and he straps the baby on his chest and he walks around with the baby. This is the modern man, and that is not. I'm sorry, it's not masculine. It's not masculine because a real, like, when I think about men, especially.
So immediately she's saying that the modern man is more feminine because of the modernity, and traditional men will be considered misogynist in today's society, which I don't disagree with the things that she's saying. Yes, a lot of traditional men would be considered misogynist into today's society, but that's not because they weren't misogynist. It's because the society itself was largely misogynist. Like, that's why they would be considered misogynist. Why? Because around the 1960s, that's when women got the right to have a bank account. I'm not saying there's anything to do with misogyny. I'm just saying that around the 1960s, that's when women actually got the right to really work anywhere. I'm not saying that's misogynist. I'm just saying that women just didn't have the ability to do much. Because in society as a whole, women were viewed as lesser. Women weren't afforded a lot of rights. I'm not saying that's misogyny. But can you imagine that there was misogyny or disdain for women back in those days? It's possible. I know a few people that grew up around that time. They'll say it was very misogynist. Like, but I'm not saying it's misogynist. But anyway, she's also saying that the modern man is becoming more feminine and stuff like that. And I don't disagree. I think that modern men are becoming more and more in tune with um, femininity or what have you. But I think what we try to conflate is men connecting more with different things outside of the very narrow box that used to be masculinity, and we're calling them feminine for it. Men expressing how they feel, we're calling them feminine. Like, that's really what's happening. I understand that there are some men that are now wearing dresses, nail polish, hair, and makeup, and we can call that feminine because that has been traditionally feminine. But what we're not gonna do is call a man carrying a baby feminine. What we're not gonna do is calling a man that express how he feels and what he thinks, or expressing his love towards someone, feminine, because that just doesn't make sense. We can't conflate human feelings, decide boxes for them, and then say, hey, if you express this human feeling that these other humans express, then you're trying to be that other human. It just doesn't make sense. And so I'm not saying she's wrong about men carrying their babies, but it does sound hella ridiculous, is all I'm saying. Let's keep it moving.
Culturally, when I think about men, if they're going to hold the kid, they're going to hold the kid. They're just going to hold them with their own hands. They're not going to strap them to their chest and push a stroller. That doesn't happen. So no, I don't believe that modern men are.
So now she's saying it doesn't happen where a traditional man carries a baby and pushes a stroller. And she's right. Traditionally, women have done pretty much 99% of the child rearing at very young ages. So no, you didn't see men taking care of their children. But now in modern times, where now we have fathers actually caring for their young children, now all of a sudden she's complaining that with femininity, that strapping a child is feminine, that you're not a real man unless you're using your hands to hold your child. Okay, let's keep pushing.
Masculine at all. And I think there's a reason behind that. I do think that this is something that society is pushing on men, and a lot of men don't even know what masculinity is anymore because masculinity has been deemed as toxic. So, yes, it's hard to be masculine when you think that everything that is masculine, everything that you do is toxic.
One actually.
So now she goes even further and now tries to conflate the modern thinking of masculinity and how we have broadened masculinity to include a myriad of different things. And now she's saying that not only are men now going towards femininity, they are going towards femininity because things that were previously deemed as masculine are now considered toxic. And that's a huge conflation of what's actually going on. No one has ever said that masculinity in and of itself is toxic. What people are saying is that certain acts of masculinity can be toxic for men and women in society. That is all. It does not mean that being a man by default makes you toxic. It does not mean that being masculine and having masculine traits by default makes you toxic. That is not what anyone is ever saying. I can give you an example right now of what it means to have toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity, for example, something that we can all relate to. I think they brought up in the show before, but they didn't describe it as toxic masculinity, I don't think. But the idea in our society that men can sleep around with a bunch of different women, but women can't sleep with anyone. Women must be chaste. That's toxic masculinity, even if you don't include women in that. That is toxic masculinity. It just is what it is. Why is it toxic? Because it has adverse effects on society as a whole. It affects young boys. It affects men in their adulthood. It affects their relationships with women. It affects their relationships with children. Like, that's what that does. And as much as we don't want to admit it, that's what happens. For example, men tell each other, hey, you gotta sleep with as many women as you can, knock them all down. They tell younger boys, they do in fact tell younger boys that, go out there, knock them down, do what you gotta do, don't call them back. Like, that's what they're telling each other. And what do you think happens as they age and want a more deeper relationships or get into monogamous relationships? Do you think a man that has slept with a new woman every other day for years all of a sudden can have a monogamous relationship and be completely satisfied? Does that make sense? How is it that we want men to be able to sleep with as many women as possible, but those exact women, you don't want them to sleep with anyone? How does that make sense? How does that math actually add up? It doesn't. And that's what creates a very toxic environment for men and women in society. There's different rules. We understand that. Okay, men and women are different, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. But why do you have to have a culture where men sleep around frivolously? It's just not needed. It's toxic. Like, it is. No one likes a future. No one likes a future for real. Men don't like a future. Women don't really like a future. It is what it is. Let's keep it pushing.
God, I see you shaking your head. I'm gonna ask you guys. This might be off topic a little bit, but man, when you're in a grocery store, do you push the cart or pull the cart?
Hey,
Because I
real
don't-
talk. I push and pull.
I pull, man. It's just something about pushing the cart, man. I just pull
when
that
you
motherfucker.
said that,
man.
I'm like, dang. But I push
Not me.
and pull.
I jump on the back.
I mean, that is kind of ridiculous to, like, every time you go to the grocery store, you only pull the cart. Like, I get it, pulling it at some parts of your grocery trip, because I've done that, pulling it down the aisle after I've walked past it, to go look at something like, ooh, look at that over there. And then I walk back over and I pull it for a little bit. But to never push it because you feel like your masculinity is threatened by the idea of pushing a shopping cart, that's how you know you in too deep, bro. You in too deep.
I'm like,
Thinking that the easier way-
you know how you jump on a cart and you
Nah.
just keep going? You run real fast and you jump on it?
Imagine
you be
thinking
grabbing that
that-
motorized cart. Those you be grabbing.
pushing the
Nah,
cart.
that-
I just
I
don't
don't
feel like
like
it's
the
my
people.
diminishes
yeah,
your
I just
value.
like people that can on
Like,
the
I just don't feel
what?
like it's my place to push. That's just me, man. I say
No,
might be a
you
little
fill
bit-
it
might
up.
be a
You
little
fill
bit
it up
off
with
now, but
groceries.
I just
Fill it up with groceries, and then you run real fast, and then you jump on the back of it, and you just.
Anton's like,
But how do you fill it up first, Anton? Do you pull it? Do you pull it first? Honestly, Anton is just making a joke because he knows that both Amira and JR's sentiments are ridiculous, but he doesn't want to just say that because I'm not going to get into why he doesn't want to say that. But he just doesn't want to say that, so he'd rather just make jokes about it.
You be terrorizing
yeah.
Walmart.
Okay. Yeah.
If I see a man pushing a stroller, I'm sorry, I do giggle a little bit because it doesn't look right. I'm sorry. I think that strollers are meant for women, and men with the baby carriers and all of this, it doesn't look right.
Okay.
So again, when I talk about this, and the whole point of me making this video has really nothing to do with Amira personally. It just happens to do with women like her that put masculinity in this very, very stringent box, with very, very few traits, might I add. And once they do this, you have to understand that all the things they say are not really going to make sense, especially not in a modern time. So, the reason I brought this up is because just a few shows ago, Amira says this.
Benefits for destroying their family.
like which?
And the majority of the time,
But-
women don't. It's in my opinion. If you want to get my opinion, I don't think that women should get custody the majority of the time.
But which exact benefit do you think we need to eradicate? Is it
Child support.
Alimony.
Well, most. I mean,
Only
a
in
lot
certain
of women
situations. I
don't
believe
get
certain
alimony.
situations. You know.
Okay, so
it's
like I'm
different.
talking about the average American, because most average people don't get alimony. That's for like people who make more than the average person. So
Well,
the
you asked me
incentive-
what did I want eradicated, and child support would be one of those things. Alimony is another.
Okay, so you think child support should be eradicated and alimony?
Because I believe the children should go to the father the majority of the times, unless there is some kind of circumstance where the father is abusive or something. But the majority of the time, the children should go to the father.
So Amira believes that children should go to their father, right? So if you are in a relationship with a woman and you guys have a small child, you are now emasculated if you carry that child outside of your actual bare hands, right, as a man. How does that make any sense? Does she understand that both strollers and body straps were made for practical reasons? They have absolutely nothing to do with masculinity or femininity. A body strap to hold a child is unisex. It is meant to solve a problem. The problem being, when you're holding a child, you can't do anything else. So you put the child on your body in a strap in order for you to have that connection with the child, whether they're awake or asleep, and you're doing something, you're getting things done. And as a single dad, that might be something you need to do. If you need to go grocery shopping with your 10-month-old baby, you can't put the 10-month-old baby in the shopping cart. Like, if you have it in your hands, a 10-month-old, which you have to secure their neck, how are you gonna be grabbing stuff? Like, what are you doing? What are we talking about right now? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, and this is what I mean. The patriarchal mindset will contradict itself. So, this is just my whole point is this. Having a shopping cart and a baby strap is for practical reasons. And just the idea that certain things are masculine or feminine just doesn't add up, especially when it comes to taking care of your child. You can't say men need to be in their children's life, but then put caveats and extra rules and regulations on that. You can't push a stroller. What? Anyway, thank you guys for watching this. Bianca woke up late. I'm not here to say if anything's right or wrong, but I'm gonna see you guys next time. Peace.